Monsieur le directeur Marc Julienne, Madame la présidente Françoise Nicolas, professeur Arnaud Levaux, Madame Céline Pajon et membres de l'IFRI et de l'audience, merci pour ce moment de partage. Thank you all for this moment of sharing. I'm here today to share a personal story, the story of an encounter with a North Korean escapee that changed my life. Based on the experience of writing a book with her, I would like to offer you my perspective on the human rights situation in DPRK, which is the official name for North Korea. DPRK has been dominating the headlines for some time now. It started with Trump calling Kim Jong-un the Rocket Man back in 2017. And ever since, topics ranging from the last ICBM launch, Kim Jong-un hairstyle, trash balloons, and now the North Korean soldiers in Ukraine are hitting the front page, spreading panic among Europeans. But what about the North Korean people living in DPRK? As we know, no information comes out of that country, let alone pictures. They are invisible unless we choose to see them, like we're doing today. Human rights in DPRK will always remain in the background. It has been 70 years since the Korean War, 70 years of human suffering on both sides of the frontier caused by the division of a country, and 70 years of tragic silence. I grew up in a family of South Korean diplomats and was brought up with an anti-communist education. Between the monthly war simulation exercise I was subject to in primary school in Korea, we call it Minbangi Hulyeon in Korean, numerous kidnappings of South Koreans abroad, bombing of Korean Air flights in the 80s, tunnels dug under the DMZ in the 70s, all these repeated North Korean attacks on South Korea have left a lasting trauma in me. And to this day, I live with the fear that North Korea will invade South Korea one day. But then history caught up with me. And 10 years ago, I met Park Ji-hyun while I was hired last minute by Amnesty International to replace an interpreter. Accepting her to my life, as you can imagine, was a big shot in the dark. Yet out of that accidental encounter, De Coréenne, the hard road out, was born. Arbitrary is an inevitable part of life, and meeting Park Ji-hyun was certainly one of them. But writing the book was not. It was a necessity. The South Korean in me wanted to walk away, but the global citizen, with its moral responsibilities, made me stay. When a North Korean woman risked her life twice, experienced starvation, human trafficking, and torture, but succeeded in escaping to the Western world, we have an obligation to listen. So what are some of the elements of the current North Korean human rights situation that I discovered through her? Ji-hyun will go into the details of some of the recent quote unquote evil laws that were put in place. But the first one that comes to my mind is a deliberate starvation. We do know that historically, DPRK has never been able to produce enough food for its 26 billion people because its priority has always been to develop armaments at the expense of the well-being of its citizens. In our book, we describe the famine of the late 90s, the birth of the Changmadang, meaning black market, which was formed out of a broken government-operated food ration system back then, and the estimated 3 million people who died. But today, the country is probably on the brink of an equally serious, if not worse, catastrophe. According to Professor Lee Sung-yoon, currently a fellow at the Wilson Center in Washington, with 49% of the population under starvation, North Korea is the fourth most starved country in the world, despite its very high literacy and industrialization. So what does that tell us? That literacy and industrialization come before food in this country, and that starvation is deliberate. It is a tool to control the people. In my opinion, another equally shocking abuse is the emotional dictatorship. No public display of emotion is allowed unless it has to do with the Kim family. Let's say if you are mourning a death in your own family, you must do it in private. But if it's a death related to the Kim family, public mourning will be organized, and you will be asked to cry hysterically in public. The regime also promotes a culture of mistrust between family members to break the emotional link, and they report on each other for doing or saying something against the regime. If your son is doing military service, which is 10 years long, they send him to the furthest away destination from his hometown to break the family bond. Linked to that, the collective guilt. If you commit a political crime, 3 generations down the line suffer. For example, Park Ji-yeon's grandmother had a bad songbun, which is a caste system that ranks you according to your degree of loyalty to the regime, because her brother had escaped to the South during Korean War. As a result, Ji-yeon's mother was blacklisted, and in turn, Ji-yeon could not go to Pyongyang University despite her good grades. As you can see, the stakes are high, and it makes you think twice before committing a political crime. As such, if hunger and fear are used to control the population, and that control by hunger and fear is a foundation of DPRK regime, what incentives does Pyongyang have to stop human rights abuse? Today, close to none. Every time DPRK commits an infraction, the UN Security Council imposes sanctions, but they are always vetoed by Russia and China. As long as they remain members of the Security Council, DPRK will not suffer any material loss. Apart from condemning them by issuing statements, there is absolutely nothing that South Korea, the US, or the UN can do to stop them. In this instance, North Korea does have the best hand, thanks to its powerful allies. When, if ever, does the regime has a weak hand, is a question we should ask ourselves. Well, human rights, precisely, is their weak point. And maybe Europeans could capitalize on that to bring them to the negotiation table. Not only because Europe stands out from a US or UN framework, but also Europe is the cradle of civilization and home of the spirit of human dignity. And DPRK knows it, and DPRK fears it. According to a former North Korean diplomat, already evoked by Ambassador Moon, who served in Cuba and defected to South Korea last year, Kim Jong-un is very sensitive to international pressure over his country's human rights reputation. He needs to keep it in place to sustain the Kim dynasty. Indeed, DPRK cares about how the country is perceived by the rest of the world and is desperate to get some international recognition. In that context, even though the relation between Europe and DPRK might be perceived as being difficult in the near future because of the war in Ukraine, I think Europe is in a good position to play that role of mediator, if it stays away from the war narrative. Kim Jong-un lost face in 2019 in Hanoi, and ever since, he seems to have given up on any diplomacy with South Korea and the US. Their relationship could not be more polarized today. Whereas 26 of 27 EU nations currently have diplomatic relationship with DPRK. At a time like this, I believe you need to deploy all the resources in the world to reach out and bring them to the negotiation table. In concrete terms, how can Europe help? South Korea is doing its share. President Yoon Suk-yeol formulated a unification doctrine last August 15th, whereby he shifted the focus of unification from the North regime to the North Korean people, prioritizing human rights above all. At a personal level, I've been spreading awareness by delivering book talks for the last 5 years or so in 11 different countries, bringing the audience a human story about women, conflicts, families, and trauma. Storytelling was my tool to transmit emotions, gain empathy, and create bonds. And every time I told our micro-reunification story, I was asked the following question: how can we help? And I must admit, I've been struggling to answer that question so far. But with this audience, I think I know what to ask. As mentioned earlier, Europe has always been perceived as a safe place for DPRK. When the escapees are asked where they want to go, they all want to come to Europe rather than going to South Korea or the US. They were educated to think that South Korea and the US were evil, but not Europe. An example of a non-threatening initiative that Europe could consider it will be the Separate Families Reunion Project. DPRK gave it up 6 years ago, and there was no attempt to reestablish it despite the numerous requests from South Korea. As you know, parents were separated from their children and siblings during the Korean War. Today, 41% are in their 80s, 21% in their 90s, according to government data, which dates from 2018. So today it's probably much worse than that. Not that many are still alive, but precisely for that reason, I think there is an urgency to make it happen again. DPRK could potentially get international recognition for resuming such initiative, and that should incentivize them to return to the negotiation table. This is only an example, but I am sure we can come up with more. At a time like this, where a Cold War, quote unquote, is about to explode into a hot war, we urgently need to think creatively. We can't expect different results by doing the same thing over and over again. We must think differently and do things differently. This transformation process is time-consuming and difficult. It took me 3 years to unlearn a pattern of thinking and accept to work with Park Ji-yeon. But we need to get out of our comfort zone and step urgently into moral leaders' shoes. In conclusion, let's not forget that at the origin of every war, there is a human right abuse. Strong army is formed at the expense of citizens' well-being, at the expense of 10 years of a mandatory military service in the case of North Korea. War and human rights go hand in hand and should be addressed as such. On a brighter note, I delivered a speech 2 days ago at NATO, and my co-speaker was this North Korean escapee in her 20s. She said her generation is not as loyal to the regime as the older generation, and that they are very curious about the outside world and very willing to watch Korean movies through smuggled USBs, even if that means risking their lives. In a way, these USB smugglers in North Korea might be changing the landscape of North Korea in a positive way. Ji-yeon and I hope we manage to talk to the human inside each of you today, bridging the institutional world where you all belong and the human world where we belong. 70 years ago, this was a Korean problem. Today, this is everybody's problem. It is imperative that we all keep fighting for freedom and democracy. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you very, very much, Céline, for this extremely passionate speech. So thank you. I'll give the floor now to Tion Park, if she is somewhere to be found.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for invitations. I stand before you today as a survivor who was born and raised in North Korea. Living in a free world, I experience moments that define my humanity, not in politically orchestrated circumstances, but in the everyday enjoyment of universal right. This included the freedom to move freely, the ability to connect and share cultural experiences with people. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I want to start again. Thank you so much for invitation. So I stand before you today as a survivor who was born and raised in North Korea. Living in a free world, I experience moments that define my humanity, not in politically orchestrated circumstances, but in the everyday enjoyment of universal rights. This included the freedom to move freely, the ability to connect and share cultural experiences with people who speak different languages, and the liberty to do so without the interference from political authorities. For more than a decade, I have worked to raise awareness about the human rights violations in North Korea. One thing I have learned is that while many people know North Korea as a socialist, totalitarian state under the Kim family dictatorship, they often fail to grasp the core mechanisms that sustain this oppressive regime. In global discussions about North Korea, the international community tends to focus primarily on security issues such as nuclear weapons and missiles. However, this overlooks the very things the North Korean regime fears most. What is Kim Jong-un's greatest fear? It is not sanctions or nuclear weapons negotiations. It is the voice of survivors like me. Throughout history, it has been the voice of survivors that have liberated the atrocities committed by regime. Just as Holocaust survivors brought the horror of Nazi crime to light, North Korean escapees exposed the brutality of the Kim regime. This is why the North Korean government works so hard to discredit us. For example, former North Korean diplomats have revealed that Kim Jong-un's instructed officials to isolate escapees politically and socially, warning other nations and organizations not to engage with them. This regime's greatest fear is the truth about its crimes becoming known to the world. Despite this, the international community continued to misjudge the situation, focusing almost exclusively on nuclear and missile threats as signals for resolving North Korea's issues. This misplaced focus inadvertently enabled the regime to prolong its control, while the real victims, the North Korean people, became increasingly excluded. Today, I want to bridge this widening gap between the international community and the North Korean people by sharing the harsh realities they face every day. In 2014, UN report on North Korea human rights was a landmark document that exposed the regime's crimes against humanity, including 4 categories of international crimes. Since the COVID-19 lockdown, North Korea has introduced new laws to further cement Kim Jong-un's personality cult. These laws not only enforced the ideologizations of the leader, but also severely persecuted religious practices, as they are seen as threatened to the regime's control. In recent years, the regime has enacted what I call the three evil laws, designed to isolate the population from outside information and strip them of their freedoms. First, the anti-reactionary dog law criminalized exposed to foreign culture, such as movies, music, or books, labeling them as subversive. Violators face severe punishment, including executions. Second, the Youth Education Guarantees Law targeted young generations, enforcing ideological indoctrination to prevent them from questioning the regime. Third, the Pyongyang Cultural Language Protection Law mandates the use of Pyongyang cultural language, further excluding non-Pyongyang residents and reinforcing class divisions. Additionally, the group reporting law introduced in 2019 established a system where citizens are encouraged or forced to monitor and report to each other. This destroys trust within communities and strengthens the regime's grip through the fear. The exploitation of North Korean workers abroad remains a critical issue. In 2016, the United Nations adopted a resolution urging all countries to stop employing North Korean overseas workers and ensure they withdraw by 2019. This was meant to cut off funds flowing to the regime. While many nations completed, countries like China and Russia continued to host large numbers of North Korean workers under exploitative conditions. It is estimated that about 120,000 North Korean laborers are in China and many others remain in Russia, working without the individual contract or fair wages. The situation has worsened with the recent deployment of North Korean soldiers to Russia. These soldiers, who endured 12 years of unpaid mandatory military service, represented modern-day slavery. Their deployment is not for military purpose, but a means for the regime to profit by forcing them into dangerous and inhuman labor. This is not just exploitation. It is a modern form of mass atrocity. The regime's so-called public health law, introduced in 2020 under the pretext of combating COVID-19, it is in reality another tool of surveillance. North Korean citizens are unfamiliar with these laws as there is no system for them to access or understanding legal frameworks. The result is a population that is unaware of how thoroughly they are being controlled. Information access is another severe issue. While many North Koreans now have mobile phones, these devices serve as tools of surveillance rather than communications. The regime enforced laws such as the propaganda material reporting law, which mandates the citizens report anyone caught consuming foreign media. The system destroys the personal freedoms and further isolated North Koreans from the rest of the world. Since 2020, new laws in North Korea have frequently included the death penalty, reflecting the regime's increasing reliance on fear and violations to maintain control. Meanwhile, resources funneled into weapons deploymented rather than addressing the dire food shortages faced by the population. As a result, millions of North Koreans suffer from extremely food insecurity, with their very right to several under threat. The suffering of North Korean people is unimaginable. Families are separated, children are forced into ideological indoctrinations, and countless individuals are subjected to forced labor and modern-day slavery. Human trafficking, sex exploitations, tortures, impressions, executions, repatriations from China. Yet their voices are silenced and their plight remained hidden. Today, I urge the international community to focus on what truly matters, the lives and the dignity of the North Korean people. Instead of allowing the regime to dictate the narrative with nuclear weapons, we must address the human rights crisis head-on. North Korea's problems are not just the concern of the one nation. They are challenging to the entire international community. Let us come together to close the gap between the world and the North Korean people. Let us listen to their voices and fight for their freedoms and humanity. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you also for your speech, for explaining that the North Korean problem is not exclusively a North Korean problem. It's really a global problem. It's our problem. So I think your two speeches really concur on that, on this specific point. Well, let me perhaps start with a couple of questions before I give the floor to Arnaud. So if I understand properly, in particular what you said, Céline, there is, to a large extent, a total disconnection between the economic policies and the human rights approach by the North Korean regime. So my understanding is that economically, there has been, at some point at least, a relaxation of constraints. Some elements of market economy were introduced. So there was more freedom, economic freedom, limited extent, but some economic freedom at some point, in particular at the very beginning of the Kim Jong-un's regime. Well, there has been more recently a return to the old ways. And so again, a tightening of these constraints. But as far as human rights are concerned, no change. So whatever happens on the economic front, the situation on the human rights front does not change. So did I get that right? Because I would have thought that if there is a little bit more economic freedom, then there might also be some improvement in terms of human rights. But this is apparently not the case. I mean, the objective of the regime is always the same. It's heavy industry, armament, etc., and not other kinds of production. And so people have to really be in line with this objective. So did I get that right?
Well, your reasoning is totally logical. And you would think that in a logical country, things like what you described would happen. But in the case of North Korea, to the extent that what you said was true, in other words, the economical improvement, that could have been true up until COVID-19, but I think after that, it just went backwards to a level of before COVID-19. And the reason I can't really see economical progress, if there is any linked to human rights, is because the human rights abuse system, as I mentioned earlier, is in place for the regime to survive. So it is the foundation that needs to be in place even before economical growth can be conceived. So in that sense, if anything, I think it's safe to assume that human rights is there as a foundation. And then if economic growth can happen, good, if not, too bad. But not the other way around. And certainly no links between these two fields.
Mm-hmm. So as a result, there was a recent reform, if I'm properly informed. Apparently, Kim Jong-un is pushing for more decentralization. So apparently he is fully aware that there are many problems, in particular with the rural population. And so there was a recent move earlier this year in the direction of more decentralization, more regionalization, so to speak. And it is in order to avoid, apparently, the rising discontent with the way the party is managing the economy. But if I understand properly what you said, this should not be taken as perhaps the first move in the direction of more freedom or relaxation on human rights abuses.
I think it's probably has a political. I think there is, as always, a political agenda behind it, maybe, but maybe Gian is better positioned to answer that question.
Gian, do you want to add something on this specific issue?
Yeah, thank you so much. I know it's outside the world. They don't understand much more about inside the North Korea systems. It's Juche ideology systems. So usually we outside the world talk about that economic issues. They could be explained the outside issues, but they have to, is outside the world have to understand Juche-based economic management system inside the North Korea. So this is the systems. That's why North Korea still is they have got economics plans. Is 3 years, 5 years, something plans. So that is systems came from Soviet Union systems, because that is North Korea started in 1948. Kim Il Sung was brought these systems. So it's still happening in North Korea. So example is 1980s when Kim Il Sung opened in agriculture systems is independently. So it's a Kim Il Sung told to is the farmers is you brought your ideas and then is harvested in local areas. So once they without the Juche ideology systems in agricultures in their local land, so they was harvest and the success and they distribution was better than what government gave to us, gave to them. But 2 years after Kim Il Sung was destroyed these systems because these systems more get to them as individuals and then thinking because it's how do they work and it's more ideologies came from when they opened is the former sides. So North Korea still is Juche agriculture systems, Juche economic management systems. So when Kim Jong-un's era, is the first era is we looked is outside the countries. Is Kim Jong-un's opened more economics, so independently they use the market systems, and also we now is the different classifications inside North Korea. That is a kind of economically, not just political, is the classifications. So is economic policy classification is we call it Donju, who was is earned lots of monies during last 10 years because they did independently. But Kim Jong-un really hated this Donju. So now is Kim Jong-un published a new law. So this law is continuous is nationalism and the countries controlled is all economics. So its situation is really is the worse than it before, and also many forced labor workers is happening abroad, overseas workers, and now including is soldiers also kind of another is forced work in Russia. So we have to just looking for these situations and then what's happened inside the North Korea systems. So that is much more about now outside the countries and also is international communities. They have to research these issues. That is my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll give the floor to Arnaud. I don't want to abuse my position as the chair. So Arnaud, do you have any questions, remarks?
Oh, thank you, Françoise. It's a great honor for me to be a part, even virtually, to such a distinguished panel. It's very important to have this kind of exchange because we are speaking about a country where we have no access. We have a lot of difficulties to have access to the sources, except maybe like official propaganda of the regimes. So it's always very hard for us to understand the situation on the ground, and this kind of testimony is really, really important. So thank you for organizing such very relevant discussions. We mentioned a bit earlier that North Korea is controlled by fear and hunger. And we saw that maybe when he came to power, Kim Jong-un tried to inject a very small dose of liberalism, even if it was very controlled and there was a step back. But now with the war in Ukraine, probably the North Korean industry now is refocusing mostly on providing military equipment and its capacity to manufacture other type of equipment, including agricultural tools, are limited. And I would like to know if you have any information about the food production this year in North Korea, knowing that now probably the access to fertilizer is more limited, and the country faced important floods a few months ago. So I would like to know if you have some information about the food production in the country, and if you already see if you have some information about a flow of import of agricultural products from Russia, and if the North Korean support to Russia is paid off in terms of food supply.
Jian, this is for you, I think.
Thank you so much for your question. I know it's the North Korea companies already collapsed down in early 1990s when Eastern socialism countries collapsed down and the Soviet Union collapsed down in 1992. So same times North Korea economic systems all collapsed down. So nowadays, I know it's Kim Jong-un is every year he published about that is this year's economic issues, and also he mentioned this last year how much we achieved in agriculture or something but that is all fake. But the result is just only came from is North Korea. It's not outside countries into the North Korea, and they never researched what's happened is economic growing or agriculture systems. So I already mentioned that North Korea systems still is 주체 ideology systems and 주체 farming methods, and everything is economic is they including the 주체 including the 주체 ideologies. So it's 주체 meaning is only inside North Korea. It's outside the country people. They never understand. So example is agricultures. It's improved agriculture. So we have got more ideology, and we also think about that is it's ground, it's everything is the utilize issues, everything is we including these researches, but North Korea never do that. They only push it that is 주체 ideology, and the 주체 is the frames into them. So that's why is the agriculture is every year is failed, and so that's why inside North Korea is still the problems. The people they have food, and also is economics the same thing. So that's why North Korea's many people is forced to the labor work, especially North Korean soldiers. So you have to think about that why they service is 12 years. Because their age is started 17 and until the 30s, they all is 12 years is the military services. The reasons that is if they started work, North Korean government, they never paid wages. So 12 years means unwaged, unpayment, and they all modern slavery workers. So it's the soldiers, they worked in constitutions or cleaning roads or farmer works or mountain works, everything is they involved. So they only wearing the uniforms, but they are all is the first level modern slaveries. So Kim Jong-un is every year is announced is about economics, agriculture issues, but never improved inside North Korea because it's without if they never without the 주체 ideology issues is inside North Korea never engaged in any economics because this is 주체 ideologies never allowed individuals' ideas and thinking inside North Korea. And now it's brought in north side, and this is still not improved. Only is the North Korean media is published a little bit about with Kim Jong-un is how he does support is the people or something. That's but inside is North Korea still never helped, because inside North Korea they lack of any items and also supporting these issues, because it started is COVID-19. North Korea still control these border areas, and they not accept humanitarian aid from outside the countries. So it's isolation countries. How do they improve these situations at the moment?
Thank you. And I have another question. It's more about like what's happening in between North Korea and Russia. As far I understood, North Korea didn't officially communicate about sending troops to Russia. And I was wondering why there is no communications yet. Is the regime afraid of any hostile reaction from the population? And my second question is, do North Korean people aware about the situation, maybe through phone calls with people in China, or maybe from the families of the soldier?
Just only few people, they know about these situations, who lives in border areas in near the China border, because it's also they also listen to the outside radios, is the security. So they understood is the North Korean soldiers into Russia, but they can't communication these issues in publics at the moment, because it's North Korean government always controlled their life. And now is North Korea not officially published their soldiers troops in Russia. So at the moment, is inside the North Korean people, could be some people they worried is the example is parents who is their son is now is serving militaries, but they don't know their son is into Russia or not, because it's North Korean military still not send any information. So example is in 1970s, in 1980s, my grandfather was worked in Russia, but at this moment they not publish it. Their father worked in Russia, because it's a government side. It's they due to security issues. And then when he finished his work and came back to home, and he was not stayed at home, he one year he went to the in different is locals, but they is my friend told me that his father studied in is the parties the university is parties academics is 1 year studies, but after when he came to home he was didn't started to work, because he condition was really bad and this situations. So could be he didn't is the studies in his academics. He could be stayed in prisons 1 year, and the educations to them is Russia. That time the Soviet Union. So could be not to publish the Soviet Union systems. What's happened now Soviet Union, something that. So they already have experienced in North Korea these issues. So now is North Korea same is they not to publish it. This is the soldiers troops in Russia. And the second issue is that is my opinion, because it's in 2016 is already United Nations adopt the workers is close to worker issues, but is the in now is still the Russia and the China, they accept many the North Korean workers, not just workers visa. So especially in this year in August, Russia accept many is North Koreans. They have visas is a student visa. It's not a workers visa. So these people could be, we just think about that is the special troops already sent to North Korea, and now is another is normal is the soldiers sent to them, but they are not kind of militaries. They also is forced labor workers into Russia, because we already know that is the salaries is one person is $1,500 a month, And also if they join the war, it's plus $1,000. And then if they died in a war, it's $1 million. So this is money. So now is Kim Jong-un only care about this money, because this money is not directed to send to soldiers or their families. This money is sent to Kim Jong-un. So Kim Jong-un is about only care about these monies. So that's why he sent lots of these soldiers, these young people sent to Russia. So
Thank you. Thank you. And I have a last question for Céline. You mentioned about the importance, the issue of the separated family. And I'm wondering if it's still a priority, because as you mentioned, I think now we are running out of time. And this is just kind of a temporary solution to maintain a relationship. But what can be done after, maybe in 10 years' time from now?
Well, as I said in my presentation, I think because there are so few left, in my mind, it becomes even more urgent to address it. Having said that, is it a priority? Probably not. And that's the reason why nobody talks about it. But my line of reasoning was, it's better to do something small that is concrete than do nothing and always think theory and big and ask ourselves, okay, then what is it that we can do? It was just a way of trying to suggest a concrete project that could, it's non-threatening in the sense that it's not political. It's about human beings. We've all had, during COVID-19, we all lost one or two members of our families. You know what it is to be separated. So imagine what it is to be separated for 70 years, not without a phone call, no a letter. So that's just, a human tragedy that has no comparison anywhere else in the world. And I don't think we should underestimate that just because we never talk about it. So it was in that spirit that I mentioned it.
Okay, and what can be done after, maybe in 10 or 20 years time from now to channel communication?
We these families reunion I was talking about, obviously I was referring to the families separated during the war, but as you know, we have more and more separated families because we have more and more escapees from North Korea. So that means that, they are all outside of North Korea, but they too have families that they've left behind. So, and the generation, as I said earlier, is younger. The girl who presented last time was 24 years old. She escaped when she was 20. So that means that it's not the end of a separate family problem. It's, it's an ongoing issue. And if anything, I think it will, grow due to the growth of the escapees from North Korea.
Thank you very much. And I don't want to monopolize the floor. So no, I give it back to Françoise, and please open it to the other participants.
Yeah, thank you, Arnaud. Yeah, to get back to something Ji-Yoon explained, I thought it was extremely interesting what you said about the reasons for the deployment of soldiers, and that this deployment of soldiers was not necessarily for military purposes, unlike what we think. And the financial aspects are also quite interesting. I don't think that many people were aware of that. So thank you for these explanations. Well, I guess I'll open the floor. I have a couple of other questions, but I'll open the floor to the others. I would like to have questions from the floor. So Marc, just raise your hands and tell if you want to ask a question. And so we'll take a couple of them and then get back to our speakers. So Marc Julien is interested. Anybody else? Yes, or yeah, I don't see people to my far right. I'm sorry for that. Okay, another question here. Okay, so we'll take these first two questions and then get back to the speakers. So Marc?
Thank you, Françoise. Thank you very much for the panelists for the very very fascinating testimony. If you allow me, François, I'd like to broaden the panel with Mr. Ambassador, because you said that you were Vice Minister for Unification. So, and as Céline Chai touched upon, some, not solution, but perhaps some leads, some option that we can offer to us to try to improve the solution from the South Korean government and from the ministry you were part of. How do you assess the situation in North Korea? What kind of data do you have on that? Do you have any levels or dialogue with North Korea on those issues, or perhaps not even only with North Korea? What about China? China has also some levels. We've been talking a lot about food supplies. We know that China is providing food to North Korea. So do you have any kind of dialogue or perhaps kind of levels on China in order to promote human rights in North Korea? And if so, what is China saying and doing?
So, Mr. Ambassador, floor is yours, and then the two other speakers may add some.
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, I do not want to be involved in this Q&A session because there is one North Korean escapee who actually suffered from North Korea's oppression, as well as, I mean, another lady who just documented all those sufferings in her book. But now you just raised a question that I'm willing to answer, and I have a couple of the comments on the topics which was discussed before. First of all, in terms of that Chinese cooperation vis-a-vis North Korean human rights issues, that we have been talking to China through that various channels, but it's extremely difficult for us to get cooperation from China, particularly in the issues of that repatriation of North Korean escapee who have been living in China for a couple of years, for many years, so that as you know, that at the beginning of this year, like around 500 something North Korean escapees were forced to be back to North Korea, despite, I mean, their objection to be repatriated to North Korea. But China has kind of many different aspects in dealing with the North Korean issues. They are approaching North Korean issues from the security aspect, strategic aspect vis-a-vis how they can deal with the United States involvement in Northeast Asia. But there is not that much, I mean, consideration from China in terms of that North Korean human rights issues. It's very difficult, but we continue to talk to Chinese authorities so that they can be cooperative with us. Some cases, actually, the China gave us some help. For example, I mean, if there is certain North Korean escapees in China, from time to time, they are cooperating us so that they just send North Korean escapees to South Korea, but that is quite a rare case. In terms of the information inside North Korea, it is extremely difficult. In the case of Korea, that Bank of Korea issued a kind of annual report on North Korea's economic situation by using kind of different sources, using that Chinese data in terms of their like a trade, or like in terms of certain like internal sources. But still, because we do not have any direct access to the inside North Korea, that we do not have any objective data, but at least every year, Bank of Korea issued certain kind of some basic data vis-a-vis North Korea's economic condition. Also, as Ms. Park mentioned, that in the case of North Korea, since 2016 and 17, when there was serious international sanctions made by the United Nations, since then, actually, North Korea has recorded minus economic growth. That was aggravated during the COVID situation, but still, North Korea's economic situation is not good. As she mentioned, that it's because that their economic system is based on a so-called like a juche philosophy. So that we are of the view that there is no hope at all in terms of that improving their economic condition, no hope at all. That is kind of analysis by many South Korean economists who have observed, the situation in North Korea. I have just one comment I want to make after listening to Ms. Park. That is that though that there is no hope for economic improvement in North Korea, but we should not overlook a very important change which is happening inside North Korea through that spread of the Changmadang, which is kind of local market. So still, North Korea is suffering. There is no hope for the economic improvement. But even North Korean authorities cannot cannot just close that all those Changmadang. If they do so, that there is like a lot of that famines will be happening again, which we witnessed in the 1990s. So that is why he cannot just close that Changmadang. Still, there are lots of Changmadang. Then that is basis for just normal, ordinary North Korean people's kind of way of earning their important lively items, including rice. So that this existence of Changmadang provides a certain kind of the opening for North Korean ordinary people to get the information, as mentioned that through the Changmadang that this USB is being smuggled from China. So that is a source for that information sharing among the just ordinary North Korean people, particularly among young North Koreans. So that that is why, that as mentioned by Choi Se-rin, that my government, announced that August 15th unification doctrine. The core of that unification doctrine is that we will look at the North Korean issues from much longer perspective, so that we do not believe that North Korea will change overnight. It's just impossible. But if we focused on that ordinary North Korean people by spreading information, also providing information through that many different means, so that awaken just ordinary North Korean people, then that can paving the way for the final unification of the North and South Korea. So that here I want to emphasize again that we should not overlook the changes which is happening. Though it's very slow, but the changes make a big differences in the future. Also, the final point I want to make is that Michelle just mentioned that then what the international community can do for improving North Korean human rights situation. I think that the role of that the European countries is very important, as mentioned by her, because that whenever South Korea, Japan, United States raise the human rights issues in the international fora, North Korea totally disregarded. They didn't listen to it at all. They just walk away from that podium or like hall of that discussion. But when it is raised by that European Union's countries in Europe, they at least that trying to listen to it. So that in the early 2000s, that there was discussion between European Union and North Korea in the form of so-called political dialogue. In that format, then actually European countries raised the North Korean human rights issues so that they at least try to accommodate some of that criticism put on their human rights abuses. So that is why that this voice is coming from Europe, coming from France, is really important to force North Korean regime to change their attitude vis-a-vis their own people, vis-a-vis their own citizen. So that that is my just few comments that after listening to all these discussions between you and then these speakers. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you for this slightly more optimistic note that there may be some changes. That's what I was trying to hint at in my first question about economic change and no change in human rights terms. But apparently there may be a little bit of a connection, and so there may be very slow changes, but something is going on. So there was another question, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. They said me to present myself. I'm Esteban Alonso, here sitting in Paris. I want to ask, because you said before that now that currently there's some military deployment in the Russian front of DPRK military, I want to ask if that can lead to a wave of desertion in the future now that they are outside, maybe the influence of the of the North Korea regime now that they are outside of its country? Thank you. Who wants to take that?
I couldn't understand the last part of the question, sorry.
That if the current situation of the military deployment in the Russian front can lead in the future maybe to a wave of desertion of soldiers of the DPRK now that they are outside the sphere of influence of the North Korean regime. More defections to be expected.
Oh, I see. Well, I think all these North Korean soldiers officially have been asked to go, but I think they all volunteered. They all put their hands up because they wanted to go, because for them it is a chance to defect, as you are implying. And it's sad to say, but it shows how desperate the situation is. It means that they are ready to sacrifice their lives anyway. So why not do it in this way? Give themselves a chance to defect. And the next question to ask ourselves then is, if they defect and they become prisoner of wars by Ukraine, then what does that mean? Sending them back to North Korea would be really bad news because they would be killed anyway. So it would mean that Ukraine would have to come up with a plan of keeping these prisoners of wars abroad to a certain extent, because I know normally you return the prisoner of wars to their country of origins, which is not going to work this time. Maybe Jian has something else to add.
Do you want to add something?
Yes, I agree with Celine, because it's there's a Ukraine is already published one of the video is the Koreans. They mentioned that if North Korean soldiers is the defected Ukraine lines, and they gave to them 3 meals, warm is a kind of warm rooms or something. That's but they not mentioned about that is they defected in another third countries. So Sherin already mentioned that is a presence of war. Is the issues in that we already happening in Korea is 1953. So it's still this Geneva Conventions is happening now. So if Russia and Ukraine kind of stop the war, is what happened is presence of wars in futures. So they could be sent back to North Korea. So this means they all executions, not only these persons, their families, including the. So now we have to think about what kind of the solutions to helping these the soldiers and what kind of information is sent to them. That is now is world is the issues and the world topics. We are not only said that is they defected in some of the country. If they defected, who is care about these people? Because now is in already is said that is China and Russia, they repatriated North Korean refugees. It's both countries, they not accept the refugees. And that China also made hunting campaigns. Is started in 2003, and they now is hunting the North Korean refugees and reported in the police and the ministry offices everywhere. So these issues we still not solving at the moment. So how do we solving these another issues?
Okay, thank you. One question over there. Yes, please. So introduce yourself.
All right, thank you. My name is Patrick Jouan from Universal Peace Federation, founded in Korea, South Korea. Our NGO invested quite a lot in even North Korea, Pyeonghwa Motors, and Peace Embassy. Also, I work with Boutros Ghali, who visited after South Korea, North Korea in 1993. And some agreements were made, both sides, through Boutros Ghali. But when he went back to the States, it was no way. So when you spoke about the situation of Korea Peninsula, is not just Asian situation, but world situation, it is true. But the one who divided Korea are not Korean people. So I think we should work on a more international level and propose, for example, a debate on ideological side, Juche ideology versus reunification ideology. And second point I would propose is a media fact-finding tool. Why not to bring some media people to visit and to have some conference and to see the reality. So I think it will help us and help Korean people to see hope or desire for reunification, to bring their people together. So if you can, I mean, that's my proposition, let's say. Thank you.
Any reactions to that? Céline and Jion, who wants to go first?
Very quick one from me. It's a very optimistic proposition because at the moment, I don't think you can possibly go into North Korea and expect or hope that you will get true information. Even if you go as a tourist, you are being followed and they just show you whatever they want to show you, but not the real side of North Korea. So having the media there surely will be monitored very carefully, and whatever comes out of there will be carefully drafted to what they want to, the message they want to send to the outside world. And to come back to your question about people, how to get people together, this is very important. And I normally live in London, and in London you have about 500 North Korean escapees who live in that country. And I actually have tried to organize, for example, Lunar New Year events with a community of South Koreans and North Koreans. And we had a big gathering. We had singing, dancing, crying, hugging, eating food. And we managed to do that. And for the duration of the party, which was 2-3 hours maximum, everybody was very happy. But the moment it was over, I can tell you, they all went to both sides and never got together again. Just to say that it's really difficult to make it happen unless it's a sporadic thing like this. And it is no secret that I had to spend, I said during president's 3 years, but in fact, it's more than 5 years to build a trust between an enemy. You know, I was never taught how to speak to an enemy. And people changing people's mind is the most difficult thing in the world. You know, like I said, you don't put people in one room and say, okay, get along. It just doesn't happen like that. And me dealing with Jian, I realized that I was listening to what she had to say because I thought it was just my job to write and listen. And I realized it was not working. I had to open up myself. It was a two-way thing. And that was very hard to do because I was not ready really to open myself up to her. But then that's what it took to establish some sort of dialogue. So if you project that on a more macro level, you know, reunification might happen unexpectedly, maybe very quickly without us knowing. Then how do you react to that? You have to be prepared. The people have to be prepared. And for me, that's the hardest hurdle, because at the moment, you know, if one person make micro reunification with another, if that took 5 years, then how long is it going to take to make an entire country get along with each other? So that's my contribution to your question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to add something, Jion?
Yes, Just mentioned the Juche and the media issues because the unification is already Shelley mentioned. So Juche ideologies, many people don't understand that this is Juche philosophies because this is Kim Il-sung and Kim Il-sung's ideologies in North Korea. So you have looked at this North Korea constitutions. They mentioned that North Korea is socialism country, but that is Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-ilism country. So this means they not allowed any socialisms, capitalisms, democracy, independent. They not allowed everything. That's just only Kim familyism. So Kim family voice is North Korea situations. So So this is the many people misunderstand is the outside countries because it's North Korea describing that we are socialism country. So many Western people think about that this is socialism similar as Western side. So we have to learn about the socialism meaning is Juche ideology meanings first. So that is quickly understand North Korea's. And also media. So we already mentioned that is Ambassador Moon already mentioned that is a lot of information through the inside North Korea in Jangmadang, and also now is many young people they watch it is the outside countries, especially South Korean drama and listen to their songs. But another side is outside media publish it differently. They only bring out that is propaganda medias and also travelers bring to different wrong information to outside countries. So now this is different balance because it's North Korean people understand what is outside countries and they need help to people, but it's outside country people also listen to the and watch the different wrong informations. So, that in 2008, UNESCO is published one human security report, and they mentioned that information is really important, but without the educations, we never improved any situations. So this education means not only inside North Korea, it's outside countries too. Outside the country people have to understand in North Korea situation and systems. So I'm just personally born in North Korea. Sometimes I really angry about that is travelers. I know that is I cannot say you cannot travel to North Korea, but outside countries they have thinking. I'm thinking first. If I paid money to North Korea, what happened to these monies? And also, I bring the different information to outside countries. How do I kill another innocent people? So these monies could be you improve the Kim family's life and also make nuclear weapons and missiles and then coming back towards Western side. And you bring the wrong informations, you continued, you also, another is propaganda, worked with propagandas, and you also killing another innocent people. So we now is balance together is media issues. So that's why I mentioned it. You have to listen to the more North Korean refugees' voices because we are survivors and victims, and we know that that is much more systems inside North Korea than outside the country's people. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think this information question is extremely important. And from what I've heard so far, my impression is that, well, the information propaganda coming from North Korea is much more effective than the attempts to spread information coming from outside. So if you listen to people who've been to North Korea, tourists, foreign tourists, most of them come back absolutely thrilled. And they say, well, North Korea is not what you think. It's much better than what you think. So this is my point. I think that the propaganda coming from North Korea is extremely effective on these people. They manage to convince outsiders that North Korea is not that bad after all. On the other hand, the information that we Westerners or outsiders try to spread in North Korea, I'm not too sure that it is as effective, unfortunately. I know that there are SD cards being circulated, USB keys, leaflets dropped by South Korea, God knows what. I mean, there are huge attempts to change the, to give a better provide better information to North Koreans, but I'm not sure that it works very well, that it is as effective as the information the other way around. See what I mean? Unfortunately. But I think that North Korea is quite good at, yeah.
Yeah, I understand these issues because it's there's videos, song, and the leaflet sent to North Korea. So that is only more the normal people they will listen to or something but at the moment in North Korea middle class meaning is who educated in North Korea or teachers, professionals or something that, but they still not change it. So we now is think about how do we change it, their mind, because they are big power than elites. But at the moment, this middle class is not to change it. So I'm just thinking about the information. We have got to continue to send these medias, the songs, everything. But another way, we send it differently. Because it's middle classes, they want to know more exactly knowledges in outside the countries. Because it's media song it's not educations or knowledges or something that's, yeah. So we have to think about the two different medias. How do they change it is middle classes. So we send it to is information something. So I've learned that is in outside countries when I arrived in the UK. So first I know that is I watch this South Korean drama or is Westerners drama is kind of funny or something that, but that is never improved my personally every skills. But when I started in my activities work, I would read lots of different books and different informations. What is kind of people said something kind of is human rights issues or kind of is the food or is capitalism or something that because it's my opinion was capitalism was ideology and bad situation something that but now is I've learned that is capitalism is economic systems is different knowledges so we have to think about now is I know it's Ambassador Moon here and he already worked in unifications of these companies so we have to think about that. What kind of information we send to middle classes people?
Thank you. So there should be multi-layered strategy with different levels of information. Okay, well,
yes.
Thank you. John, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, John Seaman from IFRI. I realize that we're coming up on time, but I had a question that I've been wrestling with as I listened to everybody speak about a sort of a moral conundrum on the part of us sitting here in Europe. We're talking about how to provide information to people in North Korea, either on foreign culture, these sorts of things, or more political ideas, different political systems. But in the initial presentation, when you talked about sort of the three evil laws, the first one was the criminalization of access to foreign culture. So in some ways where we're talking about perhaps part of the solution is to find a way to educate middle classes in North Korea. But at the same time, when we know that having access to that information, having a foreign book, having a book about Western political systems is a criminal offense, how do you wrestle with that moral conundrum on our side if we're pushing in information, we're putting information in the hands of people that once they have that information, they can become criminals themselves. So how would you respond to that? If I'm worried about this, how would you comfort me?
Yes, I know. It's we in at the moment we are not changed inside in middle classes, but there's outside the countries. They have got many foreign students and also foreign workers. They could be middle classes systems. So I know it's 2 years ago is the Amnesty published one of the report is 60s plus voices is a report. So one thing is mentioned that in North Korea they have got electric book inside. They have used this similar as Kindle, similar as Kindle inside North Korea. So they translated is outside books in Korea, but this book is totally different. Is I read is original book, but they translate it totally differently. They only mentioned including what the people like in North Korean people like, kind of brainwashed to them. So they collected the book is only is government side. So we could be in here is outside the countries, is especially is European countries. We could be targeted is North Korean embassies. There's one of the embassy in London is Taeyong-ho is already escaped from London to South Korea. So now it's many elites, especially embassy workers. they escaped from the embassy and go to the South Korea. So we could be targeted these more people because they also middle class. We are not saying that they are elites because they are also workers. So they also middle classes. So they not only personal, they including the families, and they could be know more about is the foreign students. So we work with to them. I know that is still slowly and really dangerous systems, but that is quickly changed the issues. Yeah. And also, I want to mention the another one is now is the EU issues, because it's next year could be European Union's published another North Korea human rights issues in United Nations. So I know we always mention this China is the ask to them about that stop repatriations because North Koreans refugees. They only mentioned that, but we have a plus is separated issues, family issues, because North Korean women, they human trafficking in China, but they now is families, they have children, and they also supported the family side. But when they repatriated to North Korea, they also separated the families. So we plus these issues together, and us is pushed the South is in China government too.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
To bounce back about what you said before.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, of course. My name is Selene Fitoui. I'm a Korean student in Paris Cité and a member of KCRC France. My question was about more to you, Mr. The ambassador, and you say Lin Chae. It was about the fact that at the beginning you said that it was difficult for you to accept working with Miss Lee Ji-yoon because of the idea you had before about North Korean. So there's this taboo still in South Korea about North Korean, the fact that the country is a communist country, and there's a lot of propaganda still done in South Korea. So how could, how can we, or maybe South Korea, work, the government, of course, work to help South Korean citizens to have a better opinion about North Korea and North Korean in general, not thinking that they will invade South Korea or take South Korea. The human rights and everything isn't related to that, and to the idea that South Korean, North Korean are maybe, it has been maybe a long time since they separated and have been apart.
Celine, do you want to react to that?
Yes, Ambassador.
He was not moving, so I thought.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you for the question. I think for me, at least, the big step for me was to separate the regime from the people. And that took me a while. And I think that's what people should start thinking if they want to have a more humane approach to this issue. And also, just because there are not that many North Korean escapees at the moment, you know, there's so much you can do in terms of interacting. I happened to be in London, and as I said, this encounter happened by accident, but I think there are about 30,000 North Korean escapees in South Korea today, and a lot of efforts are being done to integrate them into the society and fight the prejudices that they might have had in the past, and miscommunication and the lack of comfort when you talk to them. So I think the government is spending a lot of money trying to integrate them as well as possible, educate them, provide them with an introduction to the system, you know, as simple as how to get a credit card, how to open a bank account, day-to-day things. And so that these escapees in turn can feel well integrated in South Korea, and their children can also integrate schools in South Korea. And it is in the process of being done, and it is has made a lot of progress over the last, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years. So that is the only way you can start these efforts of, you know, getting to know each other, because otherwise, how can you, you know, if you think there is lack of information from an international standpoint, there's even less information in South Korea, you know, about North Korea. We count on the outside world to get informed because it is so rigid. You know, let's not forget there's still a national security law in place in that country. You know, we're still at war. So it's difficult for us to communicate and talk to each other. Hence my personal dilemma when I had to deal with Jiran earlier. Yeah, that's the only sort of venue I could think of when it comes to improve relationships.
Julian, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's I know it's we have to, it's most important thing is to accept North Korean refugees' language and their dialogue. I know it's at the moment is in South Korea, it's many North Korean people, 35,000 North Korean people lives in South Korea, but sometimes there discriminations about their language or their dialogue, something that. But you know, me and Sherin works, and Sherin is accept all my language. She never discriminations, or she never said this one is wrong, you have to change something. She never says that. She accepts everything is my own language, because this language means my life, and everything is, that is all mine. So that is why me and Sherin success this works, and we continued our, yeah, she mentioned our micro unification issues. Me and Sherin is already unifications. So in South Korea, I know it's a government side, they published a lot of issues, and they're helping with North Korean refugees. But most important thing is they have to speak their languages too in South Korea. Not to change it always South Korean dialogue or something that, because it's if we unifications one day, we have to accept the North side is actions. Yeah, so sometimes I think about that. Now is Kim Jong-un published that is Pyongyang language, is Pyongyang cultural language law. So you know, in North Korea, not many people speak the Pyongyang language, and you know, when we heard this law, we said that what means Pyongyang language? Pyongyang language is a different Korean language. We said that. Yeah. So this is only dictators is controlled our languages. But South Korea is pre-democratic countries, so they have to accept our languages first. That is most important issues.
Oh, thank you. Well, Mr. Ambassador, I'm afraid we have to put this session to a close. Mm-hmm. It's been extremely interesting, and I will perhaps, my takeaway is relatively positive. What I will take away with me is that loyalty to the regime is much lower among the younger generation than it was in the past. So perhaps there's a silver lining. Let's hope that things start changing in North Korea, and perhaps we can see at some point a regime change and hopefully some form of reunification. But I agree with you that reunification will not be an easy thing. If you look at the German example, Germany has been reunified for a number of years now. And actually, when you look at the people, they are still very different. But that's another story. So join me in thanking our participants, speakers, discussants, etc. I think it was a very rich discussion. So thank you all. Thank you.